Hi photographers, this is the second part of a tutorial I'm doing on how to process images that were captured to record star trails. So when we capture star trails, we capture a number of images and then we want to stack them on top of each other in order to see the circular motion of the star trail. So the first tutorial I did was on a program called StarStax. So I've already done that one. I'll put a link in the description down below to that tutorial. But this one here is going to be the same process but using Lightroom and Photoshop. So you can see here I've loaded all my raw files into Lightroom, and the advantage of this is I can use the raw files and then actually stack them in Photoshop, whereas StarStax you have to use JPEG images. So yeah, it's a bit more it's just a better process using the raw files, and at the end of it you get a saved raw file as well, which you can then export to whatever you want. So with this one here, so what we do here, so I've loaded these into Lightroom. You can see there's 118 raw files. So I have done a little minor edit on this first image, which I've then synchronized to all the other photos. So it's basically just white levels. I'll just quickly show you. So the white levels basically just makes things pop a little bit. So it was about there, I think. So it just makes the stars pop and just makes the image a bit more clearer. So as we stack the images together, it'll become a bit more lighter anyway, and we'll also reduce any noise in the images by reducing the signal to noise ratio as well in our final images. So you should get a fairly clean image at the end of it. So you can see over here on the right all these images, they're actually captured under a bit of moonlight, which is why the landscape's illuminated. I think it was about a quarter moon, and you can see we've got f4. They are 30-second exposures at about 28mm for the composition, and a reasonably low ISO. So that the reason for the low ISO is to when you stack all the images together, you get more color in all your star trails, so it shows the true star color. So you have to sort of have a look at that so before you start setting your camera to record these. Just do a few test shots and get your exposure and everything right, and have a look and make sure everything's sharp and focused before you set your camera going. So here we are, we've got 118 photos. So you can see when I zoom in, they're pretty, just loading there, they're fairly sharp. You get a little bit of trailing because of the 30-second exposure, but that's what we want. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to select all those images. So I'm just going to select the first one and go Control A or Command on a Mac, and then so I want all the images selected. And to process them in Photoshop, what we're going to do is we're going to right click and go Edit in Adobe Photoshop, but we want to open as layers in Photoshop. So what that'll do is it'll open all the images as layers under one file, or one file in Photoshop. So you end up with 118 layers, which is what we want to be able to stack the images. Now this takes a fair while, so I'm just going to do that now. It'll load Photoshop, and then it'll start to load each of those images in as a layer. So it's fairly time consuming. I'm probably thinking this is going to take about 20 minutes to half an hour. So we'll pause the video in a minute just until that's finished. So you can see over here it's going to start to load all the layers. I'll just let it go for a little bit so you can see what it does. So there you go, we've got 2 layers loaded, 3. So my computer is reasonably fast, so it does this fairly quickly. If you've got a good quality computer, then it's going to do it fairly quick. But if you've got a slower computer, then it's going to take a little bit longer. So you could be here waiting for a while to sort of get your until it's all finished, and then you can match all these together. So I'm just going to pause the recording now, and we'll come back once that's all finished. So just to quickly explain what Photoshop is doing here. So it's actually loading, I'll just go back to Lightroom. So it's actually loading the last image first, so that's 8249, so that will be down the bottom of this layer stack, and then you can see it's counting down, so 654, and then we're up to 8194. So the last image, or the first image that's actually in Photoshop, is 8132. So we need to wait till we get 8132 loaded there, and then we know that all our images are loaded into Photoshop, ready to be stacked. So it's still got a bit of time to go, so maybe another 10 minutes or so until we get to image 8132, which is the last image it's got to load. So I'll be back in a minute once that's happened. So just to elaborate a bit further on something else, the time that we were capturing these images was a little bit over an hour. So at 30 seconds per exposure. So we've got about an hour's worth of data that we'll have for our final star trail image. So you can see that one was 10:01, and we started at 8:56 p.m. So yeah, a little over an hour that we were capturing the star trails for. Obviously, the more time you can leave your camera going capturing these is better, because you'll get longer trails. So, and it's always important that you have a nice clear sky. We were lucky on this night that we had a nice clear sky with no cloud, and there was nothing on the cloud forecast either. So ideally you want a good clear night like that, where you don't have any interruptions, and that way you can use the maximum amount of shots that you can to complete your final star trails image. So we're all done loading our raw files into Photoshop as layers in the one Photoshop file. So you can see there our last file that we had to load was 8132, and there's our last file there, 8132, that we loaded, and the bottom file there is, I can grab that, the last one there is 8249. So if we go right down to the bottom there, we've got 8249. So all those images are loaded into Photoshop. Now what we want to do now is we actually want to select all those layers. So if I make sure 8132 is selected, and then scroll all the way down to the bottom, and then hold down Shift and click on 8249, you'll see it's selected all those layers. They're all selected. So what might be common to do now with stacking layers is in Photoshop is aligning images, but we don't want to do that, because if we go to align images, it's going to try and align all the stars, and we don't want that. So we want the actual stars to show the movement. So, but what our next step is to get the star trails is we want to change our blend mode here. So this is our blend mode, all our blend modes. We want to actually change that to lighten with all our layers selected. So you can see there with with lighten selected, we've got our star trails and we've got all those beautiful colours in the stars because of the low ISO when we captured the images. We've got a bit of a satellite or plane or something there, but we'll get rid of that in a minute. So we just want to leave that there like that now, but we actually want to flatten this image now. So we want to get rid of all these layers. So you can see there, if we look at the total file size, it's 17.1 gigabyte with all those layers, but if we flatten that, it's going to be a lot less. So with all those selected, what we do is we go up to layer and then down the bottom to flatten image. It might take a little while to do that because of all the layers. But then over here we should be left with a single layer. And our file size here should significantly reduce as well. I don't want to be saving a 17 gig file back into Lightroom, because that's what will happen when we save this file. It'll create another file in Lightroom that we can then edit. But if we use a flattened file, it's still going to have the same amount of details, but and I think it'll be a DMG file back in Lightroom, but it's just going to be a lot smaller file size, so it's going to be easier to work with, and it's not going to clog up space on your hard drives. So there we go, it's still flattening all those layers. So what it means by flatten is it'll just put all those layers into one layer, so to speak. You'll see that in a minute when it's finished. Flattening images in Photoshop's a good process to do. If you do this a lot, go between Lightroom and Photoshop. So when you finish with your image, if you're not going to do any more edits on it, flattening your image is a good way to to reduce your file size. So you can see there now it's finished, but the image still looks the same. We've just got that one background layer, but over here our file size is pretty much the same as one layer, so 148 meg instead of 17 gig. So that's actually really good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to save that. So if I go save, or you can go Control S. So see how it's starting to save it there. So that's saved that file. I'm just going to close that down because it's actually saved. So if we go back to Lightroom now, we've got our one file, and see how it's got that edit suffix against it. I'm just going to mark that with a star. So you can see there now we've got our star trail image that we can edit in Lightroom, and we can go back and forth with Photoshop as well, which I'm going to do in a minute, just to get rid of that satellite trail or plane or whatever it is. So I might actually do that now. So I'll just go back to, I'll go up here and go edit in Photoshop. So we don't have to go to the layers now because we've only got one layer. So if we just go edit in Photoshop, and we'll just make it edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. That'll make another file, so when we save it back it'll be another file there of a similar size. So what you can do is you can edit the original, but it's only going to be editing the same thing as what we've got here anyway, so it's better to sometimes to have like a comparison file when it comes back. So it'll be, so I think on this it will go edit. So here we are in Photoshop with our star trail file that we've just brought back over into Photoshop. So you can see there our file size is quite small this time, which is what we saved before by flattening all the layers. So what we want to do now is just get rid of this little trail here in the bottom right hand corner. So we'll just zoom in a bit, Control plus, and then you can just hop down there. You can move the image across just so we get a better view of that trail. So what we'll do now is we'll make another layer because our background layer is locked. So we'll go Control J. That gives us a layer that we can work on that's not locked. So what we want to do here is select the Content Aware tool or the Spot Healing Brush tool, and you just want to make the tool nice and small, so you can do that with your bracket keys on your keyboard. Mine's actually not working properly, so don't know what's wrong with that. I need to fix that. So what I've done there now is I've just clicked on one of these trails, and then I'll hold the Shift key down and click it again, and that does a pretty good job of getting rid of all that trail. There's still a little bit there, and there's not a little bit there. So that's actually done a pretty good job of getting rid of that trail, whatever it is, a satellite or a plane. So I think that's all we needed to get rid of. So I'm just going to go back out, so Control 0 just to make that a full size file. And then I'm just going to flatten that image again, so this will happen a lot quicker. So you can, but see it's still, yeah, still 148.5. So then I'm just going to save that again, so Control S and it'll save it. So if you wanted to do any edits in your foreground, like remove some of these distracting bits or whatever, this one isn't too bad. You could do it here in Photoshop, and just under a new layer. So so we've saved that now. So I'll just close that and go back to. So see there now we've got our two files, and then we've got this one without the trail, and then that one with the trail. So this is the one that we want to use. So we'll just mark that for for 2 stars. We'll just do a final edit on that eventually. So, but that image is pretty much right to just do a final edit on. You might want to add some contrast and white levels and clarity just to make things pop a little bit more. So, but I might go through that in another tutorial. That's basically it for stacking some star trail images in Photoshop. If you've got any questions, just get in touch and I'll be happy to help. Just as well, I've also got another, as I mentioned, I've got another tutorial for star stacks. I'll put that link down in the comments below if you want to have a look at that. It's a bit simpler, and it's a simpler program. If people have got like a slower computer or one that doesn't have as much power, the star stacks program might be a better option rather than the high power that Lightroom and Photoshop can draw out of your computer. Anyway, let me know if you've got any questions, and I'll talk again soon. Cheers.